Welcome to Moravian Mornings, the podcast where we explore the lives, history, and culture of the Moravian settlers in Wachovia, North Carolina, and the greater Moravian world. I'm your host, Savannah Franz. Today on Moravian Mornings, we have a fun episode ahead discussing 18th century hygiene and laundering practices while tackling some common myths and misconceptions about the era. We also tie it back to the Bathabara Moravians, whose communal society may have added a unique dimension to social norms around laundering. Joining us to share her intellectual and practical expertise is Anna Kiefer-Douglas. Welcome to the podcast, Anna Kiefer-Douglas. Would you tell us a little bit about your background?
I have a pretty eclectic background. I am currently in my third job or my third career. I started working in public history, working in museums and museum education, so places like the Jamestown Yorktown Foundation and Colonial Williamsburg. So I did that for a little while, and then I ended up deciding to, after my daughter was born, I stayed home with her, which was not for me. More power to those people who can be stay-at-home moms. It was not something that I think worked out super well for me. I love my daughter, obviously, but I also kind of liked to. I felt like I was a much better parent when I wasn't with her all the time. So at that point, I had moved out to the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, and so I took an adjuncting job. So I adjunct for, it used to be Lord Fairfax Community College. It's now Laurel Ridge Community College, and I still work there. So this summer actually is my 15th year teaching there. So I went from teaching in person on campuses like Lee Ray and Page, or the Lee Ray Page campus in Middletown, to teaching online. And then about 7 or 8 years ago, I was looking for a position that could support myself and my daughter, and so I ended up being hired as a high school English and history teacher. And if you had asked me 10 years ago if I would ever be a K-12 teacher, I would have laughed at you and said, absolutely not, I will never do that. But that is where I am now. I teach English at Mount Tabor High School here in Winston, and I absolutely adore it. So I teach English 3 and 4, which is American literature and British literature. And I'm also the newspaper advisor, and I teach intro to journalism. Did my graduate work at the University of New Hampshire while I was living in Maine for several years. So I've kind of lived a few places along the East Coast. So.
I love that. What a storied history. And I think all of those things only add to just the holistic practice of understanding history as a researcher, as an educator. What inspired your interest in our topic today, 18th century hygiene and laundering? It's a niche.
It is a niche. So I have actually been doing living history since I was about 12. So I started with my dad. My dad got really interested in it. We went to Fort Frederick in Maryland. I went to a reenactment there, and he started talking with some folks who did French and Indian War reenacting, and he got really, really excited about it. And so at 12, I was like, hey, okay, fine. And so it was a thing that my dad and my brother and I did together growing up. And so I've always kind of been interested in 18th century history. That's what my master's degree is, in 18th century logistics. And so this idea of how do the military, what does the military need to move along? What does it need to keep itself going? And so you have then, with the 18th century military, you have followers. And followers serve a lot of different roles. And some of those roles happen to be laundresses, washerwomen and laundresses. So just kind of over time, it was one of those things, well, as a follower, what can I do? How can I educate the public? What can I talk about when it comes to being a follower? I don't like to just sit around in camp and look pretty. And the thing that I really, really liked about laundry was the fact that those women with the armies, they got paid, they got half rations, they are on the rolls, they are also applying for pensions after the war, right? They are in many ways, they're not soldiers, but they are, they're able to kind of, they're able to make their way in the world. And I had that idea, that 19th century idea that, women just sat around and they looked pretty and they drank their tea and they did all these wonderful, but that isn't what these women were doing. And they were, in many ways, they were making money, they were supporting themselves, and they were supporting their families. And so that kind of drew me in. And then it just kind of snowballed from there as I went down more and more rabbit holes, like looking at, how do you do laundry? Why are we doing laundry? Who's doing the laundry? When is it being done? Then also, like, how is it different between, for example, Continental Army and the British Army? Who are the women following with the British Army? Are they different than the women following with the Continental Army? And they are in many ways. In fact, the women with the British Army are actually many of them are coming over, they're drawing straws in the lottery, and they're coming over with their husbands. So they are actually, coming from Ireland, they're coming from Scotland, they're coming from England, and they're literally following, they're getting on a ship and following along behind, their husbands. So why are they doing that?
I think, anyone that is into history, I think we all feel this. There can be such a focus on these like grand gestures of history, the big names, the big events, and oftentimes it has to do with battles and war.
Yep.
But even in military history, the everyday life, the material world that these people live in, the small moments, for me, how much that can teach us, especially even just about connection with these real life human beings that in the grand scheme of history are our neighbors.
Yes.
It's shocking sometimes to me how rare it is that people are taught this type of stuff, or even that like the question of talking about hygiene and laundering is almost just kind of like, I've never thought of that.
Right.
So as an educator, do you talk to your students about this form of history?
Sometimes, and I say sometimes only because, now with teaching English, it's a little more difficult to do that. Now, again, because I teach English and I teach American literature and British literature, there are moments where I can talk about, because there's a lot of history wrapped up in literature. You can't separate the two things. I do try to, for example, in my online classes at Laurel Ridge, I do try to kind of give them maybe not some information on hygiene and being clean, but also like, okay, so let's look at some of those kind of bell-ringing moments that we talk about with history. Let's look at what actually happens with the, quote, Boston Tea Party, right? It's not called the Tea Party until the 19th century. So, why do we think of it the way we think of it? And so what are the actual things that happen? So I'm not really able to always talk about laundry. I don't think my high school students, would be like, okay, people, whatever, right? But trying to kind of say, okay, so this is that moment that we think we know. Now let's look at what the average person says about it.
So to address the burning question head on, were people just stinky, filthy, and lice-covered, quote unquote, back then?
No. In a word, no. That is that thing where I think, we like to say, that we always hear, especially in the 19th and 20th centuries, this, you have, you dirty rat, you killed my brother, you dirty rat, right? Like, we have prejudices against when you're dirty. You're not lousy. Something is lousy. We have a z on it now, but it's actually a lousy. So you're covered in lice, right? So in the 19th and 20th century, like historians kind of played up on that idea that people were just dirty. We have this Elizabeth I only took a bath once a year, whether she needed it or not, right? There is the idea too that cleanliness wasn't invented until the 18th century. Indoor plumbing, things were so much cleaner when indoor plumbing got involved. I actually have a quote here that's from Susan North's book. It's called Sweet and Clean, and I was just kind of looking over it. And it's kind of interesting. It says the squalor of Georgian England was a human squalor to which Englishmen had become accustomed by centuries of close acquaintance. By any statistical computation, living standards were low and the customers for such refinements as soap few. Even those who could afford desirable luxuries were not yet convinced that soap was necessary among them. She's actually quoting another historian from the 19th century that basically says that this basically says it is squalor of Georgian England, right? So like this idea that people didn't have soap, but that is patently untrue when you look at newspapers, when you look at advertisements for. I found advertisements for like 25 different types of soap. There's just so many perpetrations of this myth because we like to think that people of the past didn't know better. They didn't know those things. We are so much smarter than they are. They didn't know how to do those things. And it's been a thing. I mean, it happens all the time. You go back from the 18th century and they'll look back, we talk about the Dark Ages, right? There's actually nothing dark about the Dark Ages. It's just, we just like to look back on the past and go, do one of two things. Either say things were so much simpler and better back then, or, they were so dirty, so they didn't know what they were doing. Well, which is it? Do we want to go back or do we not want to go back? I don't understand. What do you want?
Yeah, you point out an interesting juxtaposition of, sometimes looking back with this reverence and nostalgia, it's usually trying to sell you something, or looking back and being like, we are so much more elevated, so much more intelligent and emotionally capable, as if all of our knowledge that we have now isn't based on the accrued collective knowledge of all people's past.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So, were there cultural or class differences in hygiene culture in the 18th century?
So those people of all classes were encouraged to be what is considered sweet and clean. And so, a judgment on what is clean relies on your sensory perception. Can you see it? Can you smell it? So if an object looked or smelled clean, it was clean. Language usage then gives us judgment values. So when we see people refer to things that are loathsome or foul or stinking, stench, filth, nastiness, right? I feel like I'm about to start quoting The Princess Bride. Boo, boo. Slime, filth, sorry. The old woman from Princess Bride there, right? So all classes were encouraged to be clean, from the lowest of the low to your upper echelons, your king and queens, your George Washingtons, your John Adams, right? Like everybody was encouraged to be clean because it denotes your character. It is who you are as a person. And when your appearance and this advice is also given with a very strong moral undertone. Like if you're clean, your morals are good. And when when everything rests on you and who you are as a person, your honor, right? I mean, that's your word is your bond kind of thing. If somebody looks at you and says, it looks at you and you're dirty, you are not a trustworthy person. And if you are not a trustworthy person, then how do you get a job? How do you maintain a job? How do you do that? And it's not necessarily based on your actions to be trustworthy. It's also based on your appearance. And so, because there is, again, this material and physical cleanliness that is essential for spiritual purity. And if you were spiritually pure, then you were moral, then you were a good person and could be trusted.
So what were some of the driving forces behind hygiene culture? I mean, you've really already mentioned some of it, but was it scientific, religious? Was it then related to health? All of the above?
It's actually kind of all of the above. I mean, people in the 18th century don't understand germ theory as we know it, right? We know why we get sick. We know we get sick because there's germs. There's the older miasma theory. And that idea that, the bad air is what makes people sick. Well, again, but if it's dirty, you're going to have bad air, and bad air is going to make you sick. So, I mean, there is something, I'm not saying there is anything to the miasma theory, except that if there's dirt, you will be sick. And that's kind of one of the ideas that happens. So for the upper and middling classes, there's a lot of health literature. So like people are writing about health fully. And a lot of this is happening in England, by the way, which is then making its way over here. So I should actually say that a lot of this literature, a lot of these ideas are coming directly from England. There's a lot of health literature that's written, and a lot of it though has conflicting advice on how to wash and when to wash and where to wash. So there is some conflicting advice on that, but there's always a recommendation that you shift your undergarments. And so you're going to take your underlayers, and those are the things that are definitely going to help contribute to your cleanliness. For the common sort, there is an advice that was given to us by John Wesley, who was, of course, the founder of Methodism. He originally wrote to a friend in 1769, and then published about 15 years later. He says, "Be cleanly. In this let the Methodist take pattern by the Quakers. Avoid all nastiness, dirt, slovenliness, both in your person, clothes, house, and all about you. Do not stink above ground. This is a bad fruit of laziness. Use all diligence to be clean. Clean yourself of lice. These are proof of uncleanness and laziness. Take pains in this. Do not cut your hair, but clean it and keep it clean. Cure yourself and your family of the itch. To let this run from year to year proves both sloth and uncleanness." So that's, he's making sure again that, you don't have lice, you don't have, when he says the itch, he's talking about like scabies, which happens when you're dirty, right? It's a bacteria that you can get when you don't wash. So he's, again, that idea of moral character, this and laziness, that Protestant work ethic, right? If you have no work ethic, if you're lazy, then you're unclean. And so again, why would you hire somebody who's not in tune enough to keep themselves clean, right? It's a sign of laziness. And why would you hire somebody who's lazy, right? So a lot of that goes hand in hand.
So this might be a huge generalization, but what might an average working person's daily hygiene routine have looked like in the 18th century?
So that's actually a really great question, because there's a lot of different ways that you can go about that. And so part of that problem is that we actually have a lot of literature about cleaning. We have a lot of literature about like how to make a bug bomb to get rid of bed bugs. There's like the vermin. There's a great little kind of, you can find it on Google. On Google Books, it's called The Vermin Killer, right? And so it's literally, it's a printed book that talks about how to get rid of bed bugs and lice and fleas and all these other things. And there's in cookbooks, when you print a cookbook, there's also recipes for cleaning things, for cleaning lace, for cleaning silks. There's laundry maids companions. There's all of these different printed literature. Now, obviously, not everybody is able to read. And so information is getting passed down in other ways, but we don't know to what extent like people we know that people were washing their hands, they were washing their faces, they were cleaning their peats, as I say in my house, their peats and their pits, right? So, sorry, clean your feet, clean your pits, like clean the parts. They are taking a wet rag with soap on it, and they're giving themselves a sponge bath. Now, are they doing it every day? I don't know, right? We don't know if they're doing that every day. Now, in the summer, they very well may be. And we do have to remember too, it is in England, in early modern England, and even in in the colonies, it is not as hot as it is now. There is a global cooling period, so we're kind of coming out of the little ice age in the 18th century, so it is cooler. And we do see some speeding up of global warming as we moved into the 21st century. And so it is not as hot and humid. It is hot. It is just not as hot and humid. So it's really all going to depend on the family, on the time of the year. You know, we do know that people are, at the very least, they're shifting their undergarments, their stockings, their caps, their shirts, their shifts. In fact, that's where the word shift comes from. When you're wearing a shift, you are shifting your garment from one to the other, so your shift becomes a shift. And so we do know that people are at least doing a lot of those outer layers of the body. And then, like, again, keeping your hands clean, keeping your neck clean, keeping your ears clean, those sorts of things. Are they fully immersing every day? No. Are they doing it once or twice a year? Probably, but they are also at least sponge bathing, at the very least. Because again, you have got to be clean or you are not trustworthy. And if you are not trustworthy, you are asocial. And you do not want to be asocial. You know, community is important.
Just to talk about some of the differences, perhaps, in how we just go about our lives, what we wear, and how we launder nowadays. What are some of the differences on what were people wearing back then? Say, like underwear, that's going to be different from what we do now.
So men and women, today, obviously, I mean, we have a much wider variety in clothing types than what you would see in the 18th century. You do have a wide variety of clothing in the 18th century. You have a lot of fabrics and different types of fabrics and things like that. But for the most part, your clothing layers, because you're like an onion or an ogre or a nice parfait. You have layers, right? So for women, your first layer starts with a shift, which is usually it's about a knee-length garment, kind of lower cut along the front, and it's going to have kind of wider sleeves that are going to have a cuff that kind of attached to the bottom. And this is something, a shift is something that you'll see, they go back to forever. You literally, 11th century, you're going to have a type of shift. Up through the 19th century, you're going to have shifts. It's like a slip, except that it covers your arms, it covers... it goes to, like I said, knee length, most of the time made of linen. It could be bleached or unbleached linen. And so you have your shift, and then on top of your shift, you have stays. And this is, in the 19th century, they're called corsets. Hollywood likes to tell you that stays are not comfortable. Stays are incredibly comfortable. They're a great back support. I have literally wrestled in stays. Literally.
That sounds like a good story.
Yeah, it's a great story. But let's just say you can take the girls out of Appalachia, but you can't take the Appalachia out of the girls.
Yes.
But yes, and there are actually 18th century instances of female bruisers. They're boxers, they're wrestlers. I mean, that was a thing in the 18th century. This is why I love the 18th century. But your stays are going to serve as like they're your back support. They are your bra, but they are way more comfortable. Because again, they're made to fit you. There is some flexibility in them, but they are great back support, especially if you're lifting a laundry kettle or a wash tub. They force you to lift with your legs and not your back. So you have your stays, and then over your stays, you're going to have then an outer garment. So you could have a gown, you could have a bed gown, some kind of outer garment that would be worn over top of that. You also have your petticoats. So usually two is the norm. So you would see 2 layers of petticoats on top of that. Now your stays. Not only do your stays give you that back support, but they're also going to support the layers of clothing that you wear. I have tried to wear petticoats and aprons and gowns without stays. First of all, nothing fits, and second of all, nothing sits right or feels comfortable. So those stays are going to carry the weight of those layers of clothes that you're going to wear. So again, you're going to have your shift, your stays, 1 to 2 petticoats, sometimes 3, depending on the weather. There have been times where I've worn 3 petticoats because it's been really cold. Your outer garment, your gown or your bed gown. Then you're going to have your stockings, shoes, and any other accoutrement that you may need if you're going to use like mitts. If it's hot, you can use linen mitts for sunshade. You can use woolen mitts to keep warm. And then you're going to have your cap. And your cap is also important for cleanliness because it's going to help keep your hair clean up out of your face. I can wear a cap for a weekend, wrap my hair up. My hair is fairly long. It's a little longer than shoulder length. I wrap it up in a bun, stick some pins in it, and then when I pull, and I can stand in front of a fire all weekend. And then when I pull my hair down on Sunday to go home to finally brush it out because it looks like a rat's nest, it still smells like shampoo. So my hair is still, that cap helps keep your hair, when it's longer, helps keep it clean. So those are the things that are closer to your body. I forgot your apron. Your apron also goes over all of those other things too, and pockets are under there somewhere too. There's a lot of layers. But the apron, your shift, your apron, your cap, your stockings are all things that touch your body on a regular basis and will be shifted, will be changed either daily or every other day. You have the military telling men that they have to change their shirts every other day, right? Like, it is a rule. You change your shirt every other day. Like, you're doing those sorts of things. And if men are then their shirts and their stockings are the things that are being worn or washed regularly, they don't have nearly as many layers as women do. That's okay. I actually much prefer women's clothing to men's because we don't have any buttons. Everything just pins on. And there's so much movement, so much more comfort. But men, they're going to have their shirt, their neckcloth, their breeches, stockings, and any like outer garment as well, either a waistcoat or a sleeved waistcoat or a jacket or a frock or something. But again, it's those inner layers that are going to be the things that are the subject of a daily or every other day wash.
So that men's shirt,
yes,
that's also going to be functioning as essentially their underwear.
As their underwear, yes. And so is the female shift. That is also your underwear. So it is touching your parts, yes.
So with the men, it's
yes.
being tucked or tied underneath them?
Usually tucked into the breeches and kind of folded around so that, because again, your shift, a women's shift is knee length, men's shirts are about mid-thigh length. You're going to use that as your undergarment. So yes, and we do actually see evidence of underdrawers. That we often see. I had a friend actually who got to handle Thomas Jefferson's underdrawers one time at Monticello. So, yep. I won't tell you what was in Thomas Jefferson's drawers, but yeah, she was like, oh my God.
Thomas.
I know, right? Well, they don't have toilet paper, and
that's what I think about. I'm like,
it's
white.
yeah. And so, yes, so your shirts, your shifts, you are wiping and you are doing all of those other wonderful things that one must do to maintain some sort of cleanliness, but not a modern toilet roll. So you for sure might get a little stanky, which is again the importance of shifting it either every day or every other day, or as often as you possibly can, because yeah, nobody wants to soak in that.
Yeah, I mean, something I think about is, people have always had a sense of smell, and I know that it's relative, like your norm is relative. Mm-hmm. But if you stink, you stink.
Right.
And it doesn't feel good.
No.
To be dirty. We live in the South.
Right.
We know what it's like to be sweaty.
Yeah. I mean, you get your face, think about when you sweat all day. You got the salt that sticks to your face, and it does not feel good. And that's, I think, the other thing is that we tend to forget. Like, we don't like to be dirty. Now, we also do have a slightly different standard for cleanliness there. But at the same time, if you go for a while and you're still wearing, I have taken off my shift, I've taken off my stays and my shift at the end of a day, and my shift is literally stuck to my body. It does not feel good, right? And it starts to not smell good. And so people also, again, realizing that, that does not feel very good, it should not be like that. And again, when we are used to, people are not wearing deodorant, we are a Western culture, and there are cultures today in the world that do not wear deodorant every day, right? And for that particular culture, that is the body odor, the smell of the body is very normal. It is not something like we as Americans will go, oh my gosh, they stink, but to them they don't, because that is their culture and that is something that they are very familiar with. And so again, we are ascribing our standards of smell and cleanliness to the people of the 18th century, when really it might be going to another country that does not have the same standards of deodorant and daily, not just even daily, just like continual washing that we have. And that is okay.
So how might hygiene rituals between men and women at the time have been different?
That's actually a really good question. And we don't know the answer to that in particular. Again, we do know that everybody's shifting their clothing, or should be. I keep on coming back to should be, right? You are going to have instances where not everybody is going to be able to do that. There is, you should be able to be switching out your thing. You should be able to, cleaning, to at least wash your face and your hands.
So to get even more into the weeds of personal hygiene at the time, something I'm so curious about is how was, perhaps in general, 18th century views on menstruation, and how was that dealt with?
So there are, obviously everybody does it. Oh, not everybody, but half of the population is going to menstruate. It's just a thing, right? So one of the things I think that as modern people, we tend to forget is that in the 18th century, women's lives are shorter because of childbirth. And because women are having more children, and so when you are going through that process of being pregnant and then giving birth and then breastfeeding, obviously we still menstruate when you are breastfeeding. It happens. It doesn't stop everything, but women are. This is a weird way to put it. It's the only way I can think of. Women are more pregnant. Women are more pregnant in the 18th century than we are now. So so one of the things that you'll see then is you may have 6 or 7 children. So that is a 10, 11. That's almost a year-long process right? So if you are of childbearing age, let's say you 21 or 22 years old up through 36, if you haven't died in childbirth at some point, then a lot of that time you have spent pregnant, and then pregnant, and then postpartum, so recovering from that. So we don't have, so women aren't going through that same process. I have one child, right? I have one. That would have been unheard of, most likely, except for, given any fertility issues. And I know very much that I would have died in childbirth. Like, I know that. And I am incredibly grateful for modern medicine for that, because I don't know if she would have lived, and I don't know if I would have lived. But we do know that women are kind of going about their menstruation just the same way that we are. We know that they are using types of cloths. They're again, laundering cloths that are being used. You're folded up, just like a baby's nappy, baby's diaper. So think about menstruation like you would think about like a cloth diaper. You've got a thick linen cloth. In fact, there is a cloth, and it's the weave but it's linen diaper. But it is a thicker linen. It's a heavier weight linen that you can use. You can fold it up and just use that as and change your menstruation pads as you would just change your as you needed to. I've heard people talk about, they just walked on and let it run. Oh no, honey, that's disgusting.
No,
they were gross. I mean, they knew that was gross. We know that's gross. Like, no, you can take your shift, you can pull it up, you can pin it. There are lots of different ways that you can make sure that you are not just walking around letting your monthly courses just out there for everyone to see. Sorry.
As much as I love the thought, or I'm entertained by the thought of a bunch of Amazonian free bleeders,
right?
I'm sure that women weren't letting that happen, and men certainly weren't letting that happen. What did laundering practices look like at the time, and who typically handles this job?
Wow. So that there are there are a lot of steps to laundering if you go through each and every single step. And I say if. So in 1688, we actually had somebody who listed the steps, and it appears really that it has not changed that much in about 200 years. So you start with your sorting, your soaping, and then your soap suds, and then scalding, which is boiling, and then washing. Then there's wrenching, which is twisting, like kind of getting the soap suds and things out. Then there's booking. Then there's batting, which is beating the clothes to get the bucking out. So bucking, I'll go through that later. Let me keep going through that. Let me keep going through the list. So then you bat or beat, and then you starch, then you dry, then you smooth and or iron, and then you hang up to air and to dry thoroughly. So there's a lot of processes, and so as you can tell, it's that full wash, which that's called a full wash. It is a very intense, very laborious process. And so some households appear to wash about once a month, because again, it's a lot to do. They'll start on a Monday with the goal then to complete that process by a Friday. Others mention that they do it fortnightly, so they do it every 2 weeks. Some will do it every 3 weeks. So we can actually, say that we can guess that if you had fewer undergarments to shift, or you had fewer household items like your blanket or your bedding, that you would actually you would have done two things: completed a much simpler process, because I have done the full process before, and I never want to do it again. I did it once just to see what it was like, and I was like, oh my God, no thank you, because it's literally it takes several days to complete that process. Or they just washed more often. So you could do one of two things. So you'd either do the whole process, especially if you lived in a grand household, let's say, the George Washingtons of the world, or, the Zinzendorfs of the world. Grand washes, then smaller daily kind of washes, which might just be a scalding and some soaping. They wouldn't do the whole bucking process. It's just, or the bluing, the indigoing process, which is actually not in this process because that's something that comes around a little bit later. So on wash days or on wash weeks, it is really an all hands on deck kind of thing. So if you have enslaved laborers, you're gonna have so I have looked at for sale ads for enslaved that will list a very good laundress, very good at washing. So that is a very highly skilled, sought after. So it's the same as and that woman is listed with a blacksmith and a wheelwright, right? So it's a trade in and of itself. And so that's going to add to the value of an enslaved person. But you could also hire extra help. So you might hire, somebody, the girls from down the road, or you might hire somebody else's enslaved person. That's another possibility as well. And so that's just going to depend, but it is an all hands on deck kind of thing, especially for that grand wash that you're going to do. And so any assistance that you can get, believe me, again, with experiential archaeology, with having done this, the more the merrier, and it makes it go a lot faster. And it's a little bit more fun when you have people to hang out with when you do it.
Yeah, girls to chit chat with.
Yeah, definitely. And then, I think my favorite part though is the batting or the beating of the laundry, because you have a laundry bat, which is essentially like it looks like a shortened cricket bat, which is really great because then you can just wail on that laundry and get some great, it gives you great upper arm exercise, but also get a little frustrated with some people, you can just beat the laundry.
I love that. Did it tend to be gendered? Because you mentioned mostly women.
Yes, it is. Laundry is definitely very gendered. I believe a few times I have seen male, cleaners for buckskin breeches. So buckskin breeches are also go through a laundering, a cleaning process. And for that, I've seen men listed as cleaners of breeches. But for the most part, this is very much a female occupation. And there are also women who are bringing on apprentices to learn this process. If you live in a larger city, someplace like London or Philadelphia, you would take your laundry to a wash house, and then there's a person who is hired to do that laundry.
So it could be a personal at-home process, either done by the family, perhaps the women in the family. It could be personal through your hired servants or through your enslaved labor. But it could also be a hired professional place that you go to.
Just a lot like today's dry cleaners. You take your laundry to a dry cleaner, you take your laundry to a laundromat, and you're not doing it, you're giving it to somebody else to do your laundry for you. Yes.
And you mentioned that there was women even taking on apprentices. Yeah. At this point, there are women's guilds. Was it ever gilded, or did it never go through that process?
So the guild system in England by this point is largely gone, right? So by the 18th century, by the mid-18th century, there's no guild system. And that is part of the problem too when you look at, you do have, obviously we have a lot of records of women in trades. We have them, the silversmiths and printers and and tinsmiths. So we do have women in trades, but we no longer really have in England, at least by this point, there isn't that guild system has largely fallen off the wayside. That is still in existence in places like Germany, which of course our Moravians are coming from the Germanic states. But really, you don't see a washerwoman's guild, because while it is a trade, and it does have skill to it, it isn't necessarily considered a skilled trade, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so it isn't like it's frustrating because now when we look back and we look at instructions, you were like, what does that mean? They knew what it meant. They knew what those instructions meant. They knew what all of those things meant because it was just something that you just knew how to do because you learned it from your mother or from somebody else. And now it's like, what does that mean? I don't know. Like when we talk about the bucking process, like what is the bucking process look like and how is it done and what does it end up doing? They're not going to explain any of that. So we have to do it ourselves, which is really frustrating. Cool, but frustrating.
That's right. Things like 18th century and earlier cookbooks at times.
Yeah.
Just do this.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, okay. What do you mean?
My most frustrating instruction for laundry was add enough indigo to make the water sky blue. What does that mean? What color sky? Right? Are we talking about like are we talking about Carolina blue? Like literally Carolina blue, right? Are we talking about like a gray blue? Like what color blue? And add enough indigo to make the water sky blue. That's not actually very helpful.
So in a structured communalist society like the early Bathabra Moravians here, would laundering have also been a communal practice?
Probably. We do know that in like one of the first things built is a wash house. And so we do know that obviously you're building a wash house, laundry is incredibly important to the Moravians. And so in a communal process, you are going to make sure that your laundry is marked. So that is actually one of the important things too, that when that your laundry is marked. And so if washing was sent out, these marks are going to ensure that what was taken away from you gets back to you, that it is yours. And that laundry is usually marked with like your initials and then a number. So, for me, it would be AD and then a number 1, and that would be my first shift. So, and so then it would be AD, and then it would be number 2. So that would be my shift number 2. So things are going to be marked with your initials. And so there are incidents of garments that are being stolen from laundries and wash houses. So, they aren't coming back to the right place. Linens are most often marked in red or blue, usually at the center front. So like on your shift, it'll be right at the kind of the center front, right at the bottom, just below where your stays sit. Sometimes it's initials, sometimes even a date can be found on those. So in the British military context, Bennett Cuthbertson recommends that linens are marked with the name of the owner, his regiment number, and his company in a mixture of vermilion and nut oil. And I've actually laundered that combination, vermilion and nut oil, and it is never washed out. It does not wash out, which is pretty cool. So I've been doing the whole process of like soaking and boiling and things like that. So you're also marking your stockings, your shoes, and table and bed linen. So all of those things are going to be marked. So in a communal society like Bathabra, you are doing your laundry. You're not individually doing your laundry, but you are probably going to have 1 or 2 people doing the laundry for the community. We do know that once women start to arrive in Bathabra, there is a second wash house that is built. And until that wash house is built, there's actually men will do their laundry on this day and women will do their laundry on this day, so that you don't want the mixing of those very personal body items. But if we're going to such not extremes, but if we're going to such lengths as to divide the wash house, so make sure that before we build 2 wash houses, if we're going to the idea that we are going to have men and women still separate, then it almost makes sense that men are going to be doing the washing for the men, because we do know that in the Single Brothers house, I believe in Salem, and then by extension here, and any other place like Bethlehem up in Pennsylvania, you don't have people coming. You don't have other people coming in to do the cooking. You have the Single Brothers are doing their own cooking, or you have enslaved people who are coming in to do the cooking. So, by extension, then, so who's doing the laundry? I think is something that we don't know.
It's such an interesting little case study here that I would love for us to know more about, because, in the records, they make it very clear that they made 2 wash houses, and it was for the separation of men and women's clothing, and that they, when they just had one, that they had to do it at separate times of the week. So that the implications of that,
and I would also be interested in just to look at too, because again, the reason Wachovia exists is because of the economy, right? It's there to make money for the Moravian Church. Now I'm seeing this is being here has also made me go, okay, so we know that there are wash houses here. Are people in the community bringing their laundry here to wash it here, right? Or are there people who are washing it here and making money?
The Wachovia tract is such an interesting case study on religious ideals versus economic reality, especially in the South. And we're constantly seeing ways in which the Moravians here are compromising or negotiating their philosophical standards for living to make money for religion.
Right.
So, and a wash house is a great study on that.
Right.
And something that perhaps people of a certain mind on history would not think about, because who cares about washing?
Right. But it is something that everybody did. It is something that is it's very labor intensive. Would people in the community have come in to do their laundry? I don't know. We don't have anybody talking about how they are doing that. We do know too that, at least that first wash house, it is, the men are talking about doing their laundry, and they are talking about it is a communal activity, and that they actually they had a good time getting together and doing their laundry and doing those things together. So it would be interesting to see, to continue to look through the records and see if there's anything in there that says, we made money off of laundry.
Honestly, I'm thinking this could be a part 2 if we explore this even more, because this is just bringing up a whole thing for me. I'm like, was this part of the economic engine here?
Right.
We had people, even for a limited time, that were staying here, that were on the road, and that were probably going to be a few days before they get to their next, perhaps, nice stop. And so why wouldn't they take advantage of that?
Of using the wash house while they're here.
Yeah.
And, maybe somebody, making money on that. And I don't know. Because if you are stopped somewhere, a tavern often would have had, you do have 2 wash houses. Would you have had somebody to do that laundry? Would you have had an enslaved person? Would you have had, I don't know. That is a great question, because then again, should be and often was a service provided at taverns and inns across the colonies.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And with the addition that here, at least, we know that the Moravians oftentimes placed their enslaved laborers in the taverns to kind of be that boundary, that threshold between the strangers, the world, and the pious Moravian community. And so, once again, is this perhaps part of the labor of enslaved people here? So, what's your take? Was laundering better in the 18th century or now?
Okay, so I don't know anything. I really don't know anything about the 18th century that is better.
Let's keep it real.
To be honest, I don't know anything about the 18th century that is actually better than now, for so many reasons. Today, you just I go to my basement, which it's my basement, but I go to my basement and I toss the laundry in and I throw the soap in and I push a button and 20 minutes later, it's done. Now, I will say the thing that I do like about doing laundry in the 18th century way is that like I have friends who also like to do that with me, and so it becomes like something that we can talk about, right? That we can chat, like we'll talk about, oh my god, this sucks. Like we're so glad we have modern
yes,
right? Like there is that kind of communal, the communalness in the suck. And are my clothes as clean? Yeah. I mean, either way you look at it, I mean, I actually can get stains out in the 18th century way that I can't get out in the modern way. So it's kind of had its moments where I've been like, oh, I know how to get that out. But yeah, no, I don't know. I really don't know much about what's better in the 18th century because can't think of really much of anything.
Better is a loaded statement.
Better is a loaded statement. Yeah, yes, it is. Was there less laundry to do? Probably. Oh, yeah, definitely. Is it a lot more difficult? Yes. It takes a lot of wood. I think that's the thing people forget about too. It's not just hauling your water, but hauling that wood too.
Well, Anna Kiefer-Douglas, thank you so much for speaking with me today. And honestly, I really look forward to hopefully talking again with you soon so we can get a part 2.
That would be great. I'm going to have to do some more research for part 2.
Excellent, and I do too. Historic Bethabara Park is both a National Historic District and a public city park. Park grounds are open year-round from dawn till dusk. Guided tours are available during visitor center open hours. Moravian Mornings is a production of Historic Bethabara Park. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, shoot the Moravian Mornings team an email at historicbethabarapark@gmail.com. For open hours, information about our events, programs, exhibits, and resources about the Moravians in North Carolina, visit our website at historicbethabarapark.org and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Come visit the birthplace of Winston-Salem in person at 2147 Bethabara Road, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27106.